Our lesson today is on total hereditary depravity. It is a doctrine that is taught among the denominational world and in the churches of Christ, and it ought not to be. It's a doctrine, I think, after I get through, you'll be able to see why I'm saying this, that it's a doctrine that is straight out of the devil's handbook. It is a doctrine that causes men to hate God. They hate God not because of what God has done, but because of what he's accused of doing, and it's just not right. So we want to go out of our way to make sure we understand, what does the Bible say. I have been interested in, as I tell them, over the last 3 months, listening to the various atheists as they come out of the denominational world, as they come out of the religious world. They have a hatred towards God that is just ungodly. Of course, being atheists, they are ungodly as well, and they recognize that because of who they are. So we want to address this doctrine and let God tell us what it is, and let God tell us what it is not for certain. Total hereditary depravity is also referred to as sinful nature, sinful human nature, original sin, Adamic sin. All men are born as sinners in sin. We have a fallen human nature, and that's because of what Adam and Eve did in the garden at the very beginning. Here you have it defined, first of all, by the Westminster Confession of Faith, which was followed by a number of denominations, especially in the centuries gone by. Today, however, it seems like a number of folks are leaving their denominations. You read the headlines all the time where they are running out of people because they're just leaving the denominational world. Well, here's one of the doctrines that was taught by the denominational world, by their creed, and it says, man, by his fall into a state of sin, hath wholly lost all ability of will to do any spiritual good accompanying salvation. Here you have Martin Luther. He was brought up under this particular doctrine, and he says, now, seeing that human nature through original sin is wholly spoiled and perverted, outwardly, inwardly, in body and soul, where then is free will and human strength. You'll notice that he questions that man even has free will. You'll notice that he questions the strength of a man as well. And that's all because of the total hereditary depravity, the original sin that he was taught. I wish these men had left their mentors and simply turned to the Bible and the Bible only and listened to what it had to say. We go further, and this total hereditary depravity is really from the doctrine of Calvinism. He's the one that would institute or make it more known, make it more popular for a host of folks, though he's not the first one to teach it. Here's what he said: the child comes from his mother unclean and polluted. Certainly, if a man were not born a sinner, he were not by nature a child of wrath, Ephesians 2:3, he would have no need of purification. Hence, it follows that all are corrupted in Adam. You see what he's pointing at? He's saying, go all the way back to Adam in the garden. We are guilty of original sin because Adam is guilty of sin. You were guilty before you were born, they teach. Here in this particular text, he says that you are a child of wrath. And he's quoting Ephesians 2:3. Well, I want you to hear from another somewhat of a Calvinist. Here, this man is Adam Clarke in his commentary. He says the word in the text in Ephesians 2:3, a child of wrath, have often been quoted to prove the doctrine of original sin. But though that doctrine be an awful doctrine, it is not intended here in this text. The apostle appears to speak of sinful habits, and that's true. It does speak of sinful habits. There's no doubt about it. Our behavior sometimes is sinful, but that's totally different than the fact that we are born sinners, that we are depraved, wholly depraved, nothing good in our soul at all. That's what Adam Clarke teaches, just not from this passage. John Calvin taught it from a host of passages, including this particular verse. So, total hereditary depravity Total means completely. There's not an inch, there's not a stitch, there's not a hair that's not depraved within every child, even before birth. We inherit it from our parents. We didn't start it, we didn't become it. Instead, we are guilty of it from birth. And it's a depravity. I have no doubt as I listen to the news, there are a lot of wicked people in this world. There are some terrible, terrible things, some inhumanity to man that's going on that you just can't. Sue and I are watching it on TV, and she says, how can a man do that to another man? Sue and I, a number of years ago, we were, little Ron, our son, and I, we were watching a TV program, and it was in Puerto Rico, if I remember correctly. And there were some soldiers at one end, and a newspaper reporter walked down to those soldiers about a block down. And of course, the camera was rolling. And pretty soon, the soldier picked up his gun and shot the man right between the eyes. I've seen a lot of movies. You've seen a lot of movies. You've seen a lot of Indians die. You've seen a lot of cowboys die. You've seen a lot of cavalrymen. You've seen a lot of detectives die. You've seen a lot of this and that die on TV, and you don't think anything of it. I guarantee you, when you see a real man die a real death, it bothers you. It bothers you. And so it bothered us that day. Men are depraved. How did they get there? We go further and we take notice, not only do these folks teach that a man is depraved from birth, but that he is doomed to an eternal hell because of it. Think about that. This baby that is 1 day old, a half day old, a half minute old, before it comes out of the womb, is depraved. Now, what do they think is going to happen? Hear them. John Wesley says, original stain cleaves to every child of man, and that hereby they are children of wrath and liable to eternal damnation. A baby, a baby. We have Augustine back in the 3rd and 4th century. Infants are manifestly in danger of damnation. Damned, however, they could not be if they really had no sin. It remains for us to believe that infants inherit original sin. They do inherit sin. They are eternally damned, he said. We go further, and John Calvin, he even calls them little devils. But here in this text, he says, there, that is the infants, whole nature is a seed bed of sin, therefore cannot but be odious and abominable to God. Now, the child that you may see on TV that oohs and ahs and coos, you just think that's so sweet. God doesn't. It's abominable. That's what John Calvin is saying. He's wrong. I don't say he's wrong because I'm smarter than him. I say he's wrong because the Bible teaches that he's wrong. We go further and we want to take notice of some defense of what is correct. I was in a discussion with a fellow on the internet a number of decades ago. His name was William Kilroy, pardon me. And I made this point. I think you can read it. It says, in contrast to their theology, the Bible teaches that each man is guilty of his own transgressions against God. That's an absolute biblical doctrine that's taught from beginning to end. Listen to Mr. William, who is a Calvinist, a semi-Calvinist. Here's what he says. Their theology equals every Orthodox Christian denomination except for Ron's Church of Christ. So he would point out that I am a member of a denomination. I am not. Here's what I would suggest for all men to do. I mentioned to you earlier. Don't go to a mentor on the earth. Go to the book and find out what the book has to say. Go to the book and find out what denomination Peter belonged to. Go to the book and find out what denomination Paul belonged to. You know, Paul and Peter gave the right hand of fellowship one to the other, Galatians chapter 2. Did they give the right hand of fellowship because they were in different denominations or in a denomination at all? No, there were no denominations before the 15th century. How could there be in the first? Was religion divided in the first? Yes, but Paul and Peter were not. They were Christians. They belonged to the church of the Lord. That's what the Bible teaches. Well, here, I want him to know, and I told him, I'm not a member of any denomination. I'm a member of the body of Christ. Why can't we see that in the religious world? That is such a simple doctrine. I belong to Christ. Church of God. The called out that belong to God. Church of Christ. The called out that belong to Christ. That's not that hard to follow unless your whole mind is thinking denominationally. Then you can't see that simple fact, that simple point. He then would say, or I'm going to say, it's not Ron's denomination. It's not Ron's church. The Lord added to the church such as should be saved. I wasn't even there 2,000 years ago. Now, 1,000 years later, I was, said Sue. But at that time, I wasn't. We further notice it's true. The Church of Christ is one of a very few religious groups that teaches that babies are not born depraved. Now watch this. You go into a religious group, such as our good friends came in today, and you hear them teach that babies are born depraved. Walk out. You know immediately, it doesn't matter. You know immediately they're not from God. Why? Because that is totally against God, Christ, the Spirit, the church, anything that is righteous. That's an ungodly doctrine. We take notice furthermore, Charles Hodge would make this point concerning the universality of this doctrine. This doctrine has been almost universally received. Individual objectors have indeed appeared from time to time, but it is believed that no organized sect bearing the Christian name, except those who are like me, have ever disregarded it from the articles of faith. Yes, I disagree with it. It doesn't matter whether it's orthodoxy, Kilgore, or whether or not it is accepted universally or not. That's not the problem. What does the book say? What does the book say? We go further and we take notice. We do not believe in this awful doctrine, as it's called. It is universally received, but not by us. We have no articles of faith. We don't write up any creed. Our creed is to believe in Jesus Christ. Our creed is the Bible. Being a sect is not of God, but of men. Carradine would say this: we have been born in different kinds of houses. Some are princes, some are beggars, yet all are born in this bad heart. The book says we are born in sin, conceived in iniquity. And as I read the passage that he has in mind, Psalm 51:5, here's what I read. Behold, I was shapen in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me. Now, why does he conclude that I'm a sinner when born? Well, it says that you were conceived in sin and in iniquity. Well, let me see. Baby Keener was born in a Greyhound bus in Atlanta, Georgia. Here's that bus that he was born in, as they gave a picture a number of decades ago. This is not baby Keenan. Here's baby Keenan right here. He's still a baby. He's not a bus. If you're born in a bus, it doesn't make you a bus. If you're born in a potato patch, it doesn't make you potato. If you're born in sin, it doesn't make you a sinner. It means you were surrounded by a bus. It means that you were surrounded by a potato patch. It means that sin was everywhere. And that's the truth of the matter. And that's what David was saying in the text of the passage. We go further. Here we read in Psalm 53:3, every one of them is gone back. They are altogether become filthy. There is none that doeth good, no, not one. We then read in Psalm 58. These are their passages. The wicked are estranged from the womb. They go astray as soon as they are born, speaking lies. Babies speaking lies. Romans 3:12 is quoted. quotes the Old Testament. They are all gone out of the way. They are together become unprofitable. Well, we can see what all is said by these passages. I believe every one of them, don't you? But I don't believe the interpretation that is given to them. If one has gone back, where did he start? If one has become filthy, where did he start? If one is estranged, where did he start? If we go astray, where did we start? If one is gone out, where did he start? Pardon my repetition, but it's important. If one has become unprofitable, where did he start? Well, he started innocent, pure, and upright, and then he went astray. Their text was just given. Their argument is, you were born there. Then why does the text say you went astray? If you go astray from sin, where do you end up? Pure. But if you start in purity, as the Bible teaches, as the baby is, he is innocent. He is sinless. He's going to heaven. This is time to do this. This is fun. Whenever I think of babies in heaven, I think of babysitters in heaven. And the babies don't do anything wrong. Don't you know that every mother who wants to be a mother would find that heaven itself? I do not know what the Bible has to say concerning babies, except that they are safe. They do not need to be saved from sin. They are not sinners. I have just refuted 99% of the preachers in the pulpits today. We ought to fight against the doctrine, not hold hands with them. Babies are pure, innocent, and they go astray. In Romans chapter 3, verses 10 through 18, as we read this morning in our Bible class, there is none righteous. There is none that understandeth. There is none that seeketh after God. With their tongues they use deceit, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. They are murderers. And now we have a wanted poster. We are looking for Billy Big Hat. He's a murderer. I know he's a murderer because they read that same passage that I just read that says their feet are swift to murder, to kill. And I know babies are that way. Now you say that I'm silly. I say that they are wrong in teaching a damnable doctrine. They go astray as soon as they be born, speaking lies. It depends on what his is. And so a crying baby is a lying baby. If your baby is crying, your baby is lying. I am a young preacher, a number of centuries ago, some would say. I'm sitting in the pulpit of those who teach total hereditary depravity. And he starts teaching it. Here's what he said. And then I've heard it a number of times since then. Here's what he said. Here's a mother with a newborn baby. She's very alert to every cry. She has put her baby down. And her baby starts crying. And she runs over. Her baby is hurt. But she looks at her baby. She picks up her, and the baby quits crying. That baby lied to that mother. That baby was not hurt like the baby said, but instead just wanted to be spoiled by the mother and be picked up. I heard that. And I said, being very wise as a young preacher, how is that wrong? So I go to my study for an hour and I study. I can't find the answer. What is wrong with that illustration? I go home, I walk in the door. I've got 3 kids. They're all below 10 years of age. And I say, the preacher just said that when a baby cries, the baby's lying because the baby is saying that he's hurt. He's lying. And all 3 of them chimed up and said, in 5 seconds. Well, Could have been crying because he wanted mom to pick him up. Wasn't lying. I said, oh, I wish I was as smart as a child. That was a brilliant answer by all of them. Very good. Yet, if a baby's crying, a baby's lying, we hear from those who teach this false doctrine. Why do they say that? Because they're scriptures speaking lies from birth. Psalm 139 teaches the truth. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Deuteronomy 139, your children that this day have no knowledge of good and evil. Ecclesiastes 7:29, God hath made man upright, but they sought out many inventions. Ezekiel 28:15, thou was perfect in thy ways from the day that thou wast created, till iniquity was found in thee. You'll notice the definition, till, marking the continuance of an action up to the time of another action. The continuance of an action, I was perfect until the beginning of another action. And then there was iniquity found in me and no longer innocency. That's what the scriptures teach. That's what we ought to teach. I will praise because I'm wonderfully made. Your children do not know evil. They have been good, upright, and they were created perfect. We're looking at another passage in Ezekiel 18:20. The soul that sinneth, it shall die. But notice the next part. Very good explanation. The son shall not bear the iniquity of the father, neither shall the father bear the iniquity of the son. We shall not bear the iniquity of Adam. That's what that text is applied to by us. Proper application of what the principle is. In Matthew chapter 18, Jesus said, except you be converted and become as little children, you shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Verse 14 in chapter 19, suffer little children and forbid them not to come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. Who makes up the kingdom of heaven? Children. So if they are little devils, there's quotes around that, you'll notice that's because that's what John Calvin said. They're little devils. By the way, that child is, his name is Glenn, and that's his little girl. She's now about 30 years old, I think. But she's got horns. And this was illustrated in a debate a number of years ago as to the reformist preacher that was debating David Brown. We pointed out what his doctrine taught. His doctrine taught that little babies are little devils. So Jesus said, except you become little devils. That's the application. That's the application. Again, just wrong, and again, wrong. In Romans 3, remember, there's none righteous, no, not one. Their tongues are deceitful. Their feet are swift to shed blood. We recognize that men are depraved. Now, here's the question. The Bible teaches depravity by birth, or the Bible teaches depravity by behavior. Which ought I to believe, support, and teach? Let me suggest depravity by behavior, and fight with all your might against depravity by birth. The Bible teaches us that he that believeth and is baptized shall be saved. You'll notice it says he that believeth. The child cannot believe. That's why they baptize little babies now, because they're depraved. That's the purpose of that doctrine. That's the purpose of that action. If you believe what the Bible said, he that believeth and is baptized shall be saved, then you don't have to worry about that particular doctrine, because the Bible teaches total depravity is not from God.